Picture this, I'm a bag of dicks, put me to your lips. I am sick, I will punch a baby bear in his shit. Give me lip, I'ma send you to the yard. Get a stick, make a switch. I can end the conversation real quick. I am crack, I ain't lying, kick a lion in this crack. I'm the shit, I will fall off in your crib, take a shit. Hit your mama on the booty, kick your dog, fuck your bitch. That boy dressed up like you Santa and took pictures with your kids. We the best, we will cut a frowny face in your chest, little wench. I'm unmentionably fresh, I'm a mensch. Get correct, I will walk into a court while it wrecks, screaming, yes, I am guilty, motherfuckers, I am death. Hey, you wanna hear a good joke? Nobody speak, nobody get choked.
Happy Fangirl Friday, everybody. My name is Anita Castellar. This is Fangirl Friday Live. Every week we bring you new and interesting partnerships and people and colleagues unpacking the business behind fandom. And this week I want to bring in my good friend Galen. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good. So Galen, tell us who you are and what is it that we just saw?
I'm Galen McKamy, Executive Creative Director for Superplastic. What you saw was an offensive trailer, and I apologize for that, but it's a little glimpse of kind of what we do. But yeah, I've been with Superplastic for about 1.5 years, and I've known Anita for a much longer time than that.
We're not going to date ourselves here.
We're not going to date ourselves, but we're Hasbro alumni, which is awesome. Super happy to be here, and thank you for having me.
No, I'm happy to have you here again. It's been so long. I almost brought up my our last Comic-Con photo together, which was a long time ago. But since there's no cons and we all can't have gatherings and get-togethers, so that's why we have this live stream. So we can keep in touch. We can have some fun and maybe drop some kernels of knowledge along the way, huh?
I love it. You just reminded me of that. That Comic-Con was like the best one I've ever been to.
It was so much fun.
It was just wild. Like we were in parties and skipping lines and being ridiculous and
taking bottles of something and eating sushi and stuff.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll all be able to get together in person again. I know that everybody's probably like, okay, these are a lot of stories that these guys have, but we won't be talking about those today. We'll be talking about your career path and Superplastic and all the fun projects you've done in between. So why don't you take us back to little Galen and and your fandoms and your career paths and like kind of what informed that, right? Like, because I met you at Hasbro and you were working on toys at Hasbro, but like there was something there beforehand that led to being at Hasbro. So why don't you kind of walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, originally, like I'm from Kansas. I don't know if that has anything to do with anything other than like maybe I had more free time or I was born more, so I would tinker with stuff. But yeah, I was kind of always designing things, even as a kid. Like we had, it was like Inventor's Day, I think it was called or something.
Yeah.
And like I came up with like some silly ideas. Actually, I still think one of them's a decent idea. It was like, I took these rollerblades because that was big when I was little, and that's embarrassing. But like I took these rollerblades and I took the wheels out of them. And then I used the track and I made them into ice skates too. So I think I called them switchblades or something. Like I remember.
Better patent that idea.
I was marketing and branding stuff as a kid. So I always like loved making things and I loved drawing. So that led me to I was always doing art and stuff. So I ended up going to Cleveland Institute of Art for school. And I originally was like a sculpture major and a ceramics major. Because I love pottery and welding and doing all that stuff. But then I was just kind of like looking at all these people in the design department, and there was like this community of people that were like doing things together and critiquing together, and like it just seemed awesome. So I switched majors and went into industrial design and really got into like car design and product design. But then I won an internship because like every year Fisher Price would come down and do like the toy project. And also Little Tikes was doing that too.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I guess the first one, like I won the internship thing for Little Tikes through a project. And so I did that for a summer in Hudson, Ohio, which is, I was like great. It was funny. It was great. I was like building models and, you know, full scale 1-of-1 like jungle gyms and stuff. And then the following year, I ended up at an internship at Hasbro with a bunch of people that we're friends with. It was like kind of like this funny intern class. Like Stephen was there. There was, you know, it was just a blast. And I honestly I fell in love with like Hasbro at the time, you know, through that internship and toy design. So like I thought I was going to be a car designer or something else or a product designer, but that kind of solidified like toys for me. But I guess like to go way back, like as a kid, like I was always collecting. Like I loved Star Wars, I loved G.I. Joe, I loved He-Man. Like I was a little dude in like the 80s. So all the things that we all collected, and you know, I eventually ended up working on all this stuff years later. But I always had a love for toys and collectibles like that. So then, I ended up, my first gig out of design school ended up at Fisher-Price. And that was—
the internships pay off, people.
Yeah, I mean, they really do. And I mean, like, honestly too, like that, the hard work of like being an industrial designer pays off, right? Like, I think it's pretty gratifying to be able to make things and then, you know, get them out into the marketplace. But yeah, my first gig was Fisher-Price, and I kind of lucked into a property called Rescue Heroes. That was just, I mean, it was just kind of like taking off, and this was like post 9/11. So they did really well because it was like, you know, it was a tragedy. And then there was this product that was kind of like a little bit uplifting, but heroed the real people in our lives. Like,
first responders and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And at the same time, or not at the same time, like shortly after that, Hasbro got the license for Spider-Man, and they had Spider-Man and Friends and all that stuff. So they reached out and tapped me to come and work on that property. So then I left Fisher-Price to go to Hasbro, and got to meet a bunch of awesome people and work on, you know, I think what my first thing was like Spider-Man 2 movie, working with like Dwight and Dave Vonner and all those guys on all that stuff, which was awesome. And Logan Lubera. And then worked on Toy Story and some Transformers stuff. And I just kind of kicked around like the boys division of Hasbro for a while. But, you know, I think like my kind of like break, right? Because that's like what I was doing. I was a designer, and I was, you know, that was kind of like my MO. But at the same time, like I always was, you know, thinking from a different lens as well. I was always looking at the bigger picture, like what's the marketing behind this, or what are the stories that we're telling?
Right.
Like what's the branding that's going on? And I felt like I needed to kind of grow a bit more, right? Because I know how to make things, I know how to design things, I have an eye for that stuff. But like what I really wanted to do was kind of like grow into like, how do I bring that to another level, into another discipline? So I left Hasbro to become creative director of Kid Robot. And at the time, you know, Kid Robot was like, you know, this awesome, crazy brand that was designer toys. It was kind of hype. It was culture. It was apparel. And it collaborated with really great people. I was there for about 4.5 years, I guess. We moved from Providence, where Hasbro was, or Pawtucket, Rhode Island, to Boulder, Colorado, because Robot had moved, which was crazy because it was a New York-based company. I did that.
So that's how you got out to Colorado. I wasn't sure how like you made the move from Rhode Island to Colorado. I mean, it just seems much more wholesome, of course, but you know.
It's wild. I mean, it was wild. It was like I had just gotten married to my wife, and it was maybe 2 months later, and she's from the East Coast, so she's from Boston.
Oh wow, yeah.
We're moving to Colorado for this crazy company. So I did that and learned a lot. You know, really learned, I'd say, the art of like brand building and collaboration, and just learning how to identify really interesting projects and bring those to life. But from there, you know, I still wanted to learn and grow more. And I think that's like part of like how I am. Like I'm just kind of like always trying to do more, gain more, absorb more, or whatever.
Yeah.
But I jumped from Kid Robot into the marketing and advertising world.
Oh wow.
Okay. Yeah, which is kind of wild. because I wanted to work on other brands. So I jumped to a company, an advertising agency, for about a year that was just kind of like one of those like not awesome advertising situations. You know what I mean? Like it's exactly what you would have thought. And I didn't know, right? So I was kind of green to that world a little bit. They wanted me to come on because like I knew whatever culture and people and things, and they wanted to like up their brandship. But at the same time, it just was kind of one of those like, I don't know if I like the world.
It wasn't a good fit for you.
It was not a good fit, but it was great for the reasons of like, I got to understand kind of what that genre of marketing or advertising is, because that's out there. Right. And like, and I get it. And I knew it. And I look at it like it was still an awesome thing. But I ended up going to a really good shop, a really good, marketing agency that's located in Boulder, but there's offices all over the United States and Canada. So there was, I was working and overseeing creative in New York and Portland and Toronto and Chicago. Yeah. So, but that was like a ton of travel. Like that was insane because you're out on the road pitching clients and pitching projects, but also like working with the other offices and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did that, and I'm talking.
And so it's bad for travel, but on the other hand, it's really good for like, for instance, there's different perspectives on how to talk to consumers or influence or like just the cultural aspect of the different cities. And I don't mean necessarily ethnicity or what have you, although that has to play in it sometimes too. But what I mean is every city has its own vibe, right? Its own kind of way of doing things or lingo and stuff. And so when those people are in those environments, they bring that to the table. And so you're kind of picking up a little bit of all of those kind of sensitivities, I would imagine, and incorporating them, as you're learning and as you're growing.
I mean, that's an awesome. Yeah. I mean, it's 100%. Like I was primarily doing like experience-based marketing at that point too. So if we're working with Adidas on something in Portland or Adidas anywhere, like everywhere we would go, the experience or marketing would be catered towards that location, right? Because you're building a community around your brand,
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I just learned so much in that space and like was able to create a bunch of really awesome stuff with really great people. But then about a year, almost 2 years ago, Paul Budnitz hit me up and Huck G. And Huck's my boy for a long time. He's like world famous toy designer. I worked with him on a ton of stuff at Kid Robot. And Paul Budnitz started, Kid Robot, as I said, I think in the beginning. Maybe we were talking about that before.
Yeah, I think we were talking about later.
Okay, should I just segue into like Superplastic now?
Yeah, why, please? Because we're already moving in there.
All right, you just tell me if I'm talking too much because I've had like a bunch of coffee.
It's your time.
It's
you're going to be talking a lot.
It's our time. Yeah. So Superplastic is like this crazy awesome brand, right? And it was founded by Paul Budnitz. He was the founder of Kid Robot and kind of a social network called Ello, Budnitz Bicycles, and a bunch of other stuff. And he's just kind of like this like wildly creative, person that can get brands off the ground and do really remarkable things. So I was intrigued at just the fact of working, with him and on this brand. And I would say like we say that Superplastic it's like Marvel and Disney and Supreme got together and made a baby, right? Because we're creating this like entertainment brand that's rooted in narratives around IP and characters we're developing that coexist with toys that were being designed, and it's living in this ecosystem of social media, right? So like
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I mean, we essentially like we're creating and developing our own IP and narrative and stories that goes up on social media. We're using new media marketing for all of this stuff. The characters that we're developing, if you go to their Instagrams, like, there's, I think over 6 million followers combined with like, the people that we have out in the world right now.
So the characters each have their own Instagram or,
cool. They have their own channel and they talk, to each other's channels. They talk to fans. We actually they're influencers. I mean, they get paid to do brand endorsements and collaborations. So last year we started our journey with Gucci and we had our characters, you know, in Gucci clothes, and it was an official collab. And
I think we have some photos too. As you're talking, we'll probably cycle through some
cool.
of those to show like the characters, and then there's one with the Gucci, like you're mentioning. So kind of shows them in the collective, you know, kind of grouping. But you're saying that each one of those, it has their own individual accounts, and they talk to their own fans and kind of our own, you know, digital influencers and such like that. I think that's a very unique, interesting perspective. So, but these are characters that you guys are, you know, creating yourselves. They are in-house creation IP. They're not a licensed character.
Yeah, and like I think part of the benefit of like the companies, it's really interesting. Like we're a startup. We're about 2 years into our brand. We've moved very fast, and we've like been very calculated with like our brand growth and trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
It's all been about owning our own IP, right? So like we've had lots of like, you know, we've pitched movies and shows, and we've gotten deals from like, remember Quibi? Like, you know, there's I mean, we've gotten deals with big networks that were laid out, but they wanted to control our own, you know, the IP, or the IP. Right. And we walked because, you know, we want to be in control of all that. And actually now, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that's I wouldn't say trend, but that's a newer piece that is more important, always been important to the creative community, especially artists and designers and such like that. But it's being something that they have more of a voice in it, I would say, like they're more passionate about it, and they're willing to walk from deals. Whereas before, it kind of felt like they didn't really have choices in that. If they wanted to get their content out, they wanted to get their, you know, whatever it was made, you know, they kind of had to give up some of the control. I think TMNT is probably the only one that I can bring to mind real quick that they just like, no, we'll just do it ourselves kind of idea, at least for a while.
Yeah, that's a great example too. I love that. Yeah, I mean, there's value to building a brand out with your own intellectual property. Like, so,
how do you evaluate that value though? I think a lot of people don't know how to evaluate that.
I mean, for us, because of like what we're doing is something I don't think anyone else is really doing right now, right? Like we're creating influencers on social media that are telling these stories. They're all animated. They're all crazy and wild. And kind of the secret sauce a little bit is like we've put together a team of like the best animators we feel that are in the business, and they're all sitting in Burlington, Vermont now at the headquarters, which is wild. Right? So like it's insane. I'm supposed to be moving to Burlington at some point. I'm in Boulder, pandemic, but
wow.
Yeah, that'll
be a whole nother
that's like a whole nother story. Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, so we have like these amazing, talented people on staff that are putting together these wild ideas, and you know, we have our whole creative process. But the output and back to your question, the value for us is, you know, we've got characters that have millions of followers now, and they have influence, right? Mm-hmm. So that's like the easiest way to set it up. The second is we use them to also sell product. So it's interconnected. So the ecosystem we've created feeds itself. We make toys. We have like the Janky series. Janky's also a character. So Janky designs the Janky series, right? You've got our apparel lines, and, you know, Googimon may design the apparel line, but we're able to market through him as well and use him as anyone would use an influencer. So yeah, I mean,
who came up with that idea? It's very unique. Who came up with that idea?
I mean, it's a collection of everyone. I mean, everybody's
throwing in stuff into the pot, basically making a stew.
Yeah, I mean, the business idea was Paul, you know, from jump. You know, the vision of what it can be. And I think, like, you know, we've got a really great team of a handful of people that kind of like jump into rooms and really try and figure out what the hell we're doing, you know. And honestly, like, we're able to be really nimble and fast because, you know, we're not owned by anyone, and we're you know, we're self-sufficient. You know, the toy sales alone are great. You know, we make millions of dollars a year off of that to feed the company. But the reality is, like, that's not really the drive. Like, the drive right now for us is just like getting the entertainment out, you know, getting the movie done, getting the series and stuff done, you know.
So the toys is a means to an end. It's kind of feeding into the larger vision of the entertainment piece.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that the toys also, from a collectible standpoint, they represent our company too, and our brand, right? Like they're hands down, like I can go I should grab some stuff. I'm staring over, I've got like boxes here, I'll show you. Got like boxes of Gorillaz over there and stuff. So
so tell us about those projects. I mean, because you have your own IP, and yet you guys, I've been following along, which is why I was like, you need to come on and let's have a chat. Because then I also see, the Gorillaz piece, which is not owned and operated. So tell us about some of the, the core tenant is, like you said, Superplastic, right? So you're talking toys and, collectibles there. So how did you like kind of introduce that, working with the Gorillaz, the music group, and bringing that into what you're doing?
So I think like the business model of Kid Robot, and again, like Paulo and Kid Robot, and he's got a good relationship with Jamie Hewitt and the Gorillaz. Kid Robot did the first toys.
Yeah.
I think like over 10 years ago.
Well, they pretty much started, like, broke the ice on the vinyl business, the I wouldn't say deformed, but like the designer toy kind of concept, right? Yeah. So there's some elements that I'm sure are going to bleed through into Superplastic.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and that's, the toys that we make are, continuation of Western vinyl. We do still, we collaborate with artists to make things as well. The Gorillaz, we're fortunate to work with them. I think it's because they trust us at this point. And that one's unique because we don't do a ton of out licensing. We're focusing on our brands too. So when we do collaborate with somebody, it's got to be really creative, special, meaningful. And we've got some good collaborations coming down the pipeline this year, but yeah, the Gorillaz is huge for us. It's one of the biggest, like kind of co-projects that we put out every year. And this one was special because it was actually like all 4 band members for the first time. And so like people could collect the whole set for the first time in 10 years. So that was really fun and special. And Huck oversees our product development and all that stuff. And we've got an amazing animation team, an amazing product team. But where I was going is like, the product's flawless, and I'm a product person. Like I look at something and I'm like, this is dope, or this is not.
Right. Yeah.
The paint hits are perfect. The product is like perfect. And that's a representation of our brand, right? So like everything that we're putting out is, in my opinion, like it is at that level, and we scrutinize the shit out of it to get it to that level. Right. But then when people see it, they're like, this is wild. Like, it's weird because I'll talk with like brand people or marketing people or just people outside of the creative space, like that are making stuff. They see it one way, and then I'll talk with an artist who's making art, and they see it a different way. And it's kind of cool. So I think we're onto something good, but yeah. I don't know if
what are those 2 perspectives that you're saying? So outside and the inside, what are those perspectives like?
So from the, from a macro, I would say, like, to break it down, someone that's not building creative or hands-on making creative is looking at it from a macro level, and they're seeing the stuff on social media. They're watching the videos, they're seeing the product. People that are kind of maybe like more hands-on, and this isn't a good or bad thing. This is just
it's just interesting to see the different perspectives.
Yeah, like an artist will look at it and be like, oh, like I saw like how you put that together, or like how your animations are rigged. It's just kind of like all those little
technical aspects.
Right, like all those little nuances that make it good or bad. So it's just, it's fun.
That's like me always noticing boxes and packaging on stuff where I'm like in Target or I don't know where it is, and I'm like, do you see the box on this thing? Like, this packaging's amazing. And only somebody who develops product for a living or what have you can really appreciate those details, because those are hidden details sometimes, but yet they're so important to the overall presentation of the item. And sometimes you can just trip at the finish line if you don't execute. Your item could be so wonderful and what have you, but if you can't execute on one particular aspect, or the wrapping or the packaging or the shipping, like everything, even the packaging could be great, but if you put it in a master carton that doesn't pass drop ships and all your stuff arrives crushed, like you tripped at the finish line. So, from beginning to end, the devil's in the details. And if you're a brand that's not looking at even, your drop ship testing, like there's a problem there, because then it kind of it doesn't project you in the most positive light that you could be in. Right. I mean, sometimes some people are like, and then you get a bad reputation just because you didn't check one small detail, and sometimes that small detail could be the most critical.
100%. I mean, I think where we're lucky is we're not scrambling, like we're not in it right now for a cash grab or like even sustainability. So we have the luxury to kind of sit back and make sure it's all dialed and not crap. And Paul, I mean, that's Paul's whole MO. And honestly, like it's been an awesome education as a creative working with someone like that, right? Because you get to see like, oh, like this is a methodology of brand building, and I think at the heart of it for us, it really is like your shit has to be dialed and awesome and different, right? And I think like with what we're doing, like this is like, it's not a motto because mottos are kind of corny, but it's like, we're definitely not, we're paid to be disruptive and we're paid to be unique and individual in a space that we're kind of creating.
Right.
And people have asked, like we've done like interviews and stuff, and they were like, well, who's your competition and all this, because it's a new space.
Right.
And I mean, the reality is we don't really feel like we have one because we're able to just create and make our own weirdness and that's kind of what we're focused on.
Yeah, you might not have a direct competitor, but yet you're taking influences probably from, and learnings, whether they be good or bad learnings, from all the various other people, like, like you're mentioning Kid Robot. And that's a foundational piece that probably, if it hadn't occurred, that phase in his life, meaning the founders, like, Superplastic might look a lot different, right? It might be a little bit of a different entity.
Totally. 100%. Yeah. I mean, that, that's a career path that led to my career path, know? Yeah. Everything would be different. 100%. So
when you guys wanted to get started and you're thinking, okay, we're going to launch this business, take us a little bit behind the scenes on how did you go from like 0 to 100 so quickly in recognition? Now, mind you, your brand awareness, to use the lingo, is still growing within mainstream licensing and what have you. There's probably some folks out there who are a little bit more savvy and have followed you along or have seen your logo and a little bit of your business, but don't really know about Superplastic. So, but in the toy community or collector community, people are noticing, and you are, to your point, disruptive. And so that's why people are like, oh, and some eyebrows are being raised. So if you're, when you were launching all of that, what was the process like? And how did you say, we're going to start with these animated characters, or we're going to, what kind of social media tactics were you thinking about? Or what, to kind of break it down that way, like how did you launch that process?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the beginning of like the mission is to create a universe, right? And like we're just getting started. We literally, like, I can get into it a little bit, but our goal is to create a massive cache of characters that all function the same way on social media and in real life, in the metaverse, new spaces that I'm sure we'll get into. So to do that, it all starts with like the story and the development of those characters, right? And I think what we're really good at and what I love doing is like dialing into culture and trying to figure out the nuances to make something, right? So it's like each character is a representation of something that's dope that's happening in the real world, whether it's sneaker culture, fashion culture, music, all those things. Like we find the white space and create the thing, right?
Okay.
And then, we actually are, for how crazy and weird we look, we're extremely analytical and digital. Like everything that we do is tracked and analyzed. We have a team that tracks performance of posts, right? So like we know down to like how much time should we be putting into this video? Like everything is broken down essentially to like, what's the value of this asset, right, and all of that. And then we throw crazy at it and it goes and becomes
so there's
insane.
still data analytics involved,
Yes.
right? There's still budgetary constraints. There's still what we think of as corporate America, needs and adjustments and stuff, but yet you guys are still using those.
Yeah, I mean, we have it's taken a bit of time. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, we nailed this shit. Like from day one, from jump, we were great. Like we have trial and error, but what we've found is like, we know the process of creating the social media and the marketing. Mm-hmm. And because it's all animated, we understand the cost implications of like what we're doing. But when it comes to the actual marketing, like that's where we're really unique, because it's 100% new media marketing. Like nothing we're doing is traditional. Like we're still doing pushed and paid and all that stuff for product drops and targeting the same way everyone else is. But we're able to collaborate and use PR and use media outlets in different ways because of the uniqueness of our business and our characters. So I think that helps hugely with the marketing mix, right?
Yeah. But you need to know where your consumer sits, right? Like where they live digitally, what are they talking about? What's the space that they're occupying? Not in a bad way, but in a good way. Like where are they? And what's their language, right? And so how did you find them? Where did you decide that you were gonna place your messaging in specific places? And what are those places?
Honestly, we have our core audience for toy, right? Like we know who they are. It's the same people that also collect vinyl from other companies or just collect toys in general. And there's also a mix of obviously like streetwear and fashion and culture that goes into that as well. As far as like our entertainment and IP, we're building and drafting off of things that we think are cool, to be completely honest. Like we love brands that are like us, right? And we collaborate with brands that are like us and people that are like us. We're drawn to modern progressive culture and fashion and function and all that stuff. So you'll see us collaborating with like Rico Nasty, who's, crazy young, artist rapper who's so wildly vivid and has like, an insane amount of creativity within her work. And that matches really well with like our work. So we did, we did a project with her and we have another one coming up. We're working with like J.Balvin, who's also very like loud in the space, does some really interesting things as a character and a personality. Those are the kinds of like people and the kinds of brands that we kind of like mess with. They have the same sensibilities, I would say, culturally and just like.
So you kind of almost, if I'm saying this wrong, let me know, but you're kind of saying, okay, so the fans we want to collaborate with these brands and these talent, this talent, let's say J.Balvin, whatever, his fans sit in this space here. So we're going to market, we're going to put our messaging, our editorial, our articles, our PR dollars or whatever it is, or even our animation. We'll put it in that space wherever his fans are to bring them into the Superplastic, brand. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's fair. And obviously the collaboration itself helps, when we start the PR machine and like, they start talking about us, like the crossover is really unique and nice. Yeah, sure.
Well, it's funny because I just had this similar conversation with someone recently where it's like, well, if you're a new brand or even established brand, but you're trying to get into a different space, that's where the collaborations start to happen, where, you as a brand collaborate with another person and they get introduced to you and vice versa, right? Then the other brand gets introduced to your fan base. So, that's kind of, as an example in my own career, like that's where we ended up having the Star Wars Santa Cruz skateboards, because I was looking to keep kids engaged with Star Wars from, young age to adult age. And we're like, all right, well, where are they? They're playing video games, they're playing sports, they're doing, so we had no things in those spaces, right? To your point of white space. So you start to look at, all right, who has credibility in that space that I can work with, and vice versa, right? We lend them credibility by working with Star Wars, and they lend us credibility in the sporting goods space or in the skate space by working with them. Mm-hmm. So sometimes if you're a new brand and you're not as savvy, that's kind of like the route I would say that some people need to go in to maybe, expand their consumer base, expand their fan base, expand their dollars, whatever it is that they need to do that's new and unusual today. because sometimes you just get a little stagnant and you just need to like mix it up a little bit. You guys are starting off that way already. You're not even like, you don't have to establish yourself and then mix it up. You're already mixing it up by working with those collaborations.
Yeah. And that's also like years of relationships and development that we all have brought to the table, like between Paul, myself, Huck, like we have these people and connections that we've worked with, and they do, they're deep in entertainment and music and fashion and all that. So it's easier to do. We also have like amazing investors who help us out too. Our investment groups are like, they're dialed and connected to culture as well. So it's, it's pretty good. I mean, I think where we kind of sit within that space though is, I think we try and do everything as authentically as we can. And I know that word gets thrown out with probably every brand, and like, we want to be authentic and It's like, okay, but if like you're a massive brand and you have a multi-$100 million XYZ collaboration, like you're approaching the space probably a little bit differently, right? Where those collaborations and authenticity actually go back to that brand reflection that we're trying to do, where it's like that has to be perfectly curated and make sense, right?
Right.
Like we can't, like we get approached by other brands and people to do things a lot, and a lot of times it's like, this isn't a right fit, or it just feels kind of like it's not highlighting our brand, right? Like it
has to be win-win.
Yeah, and I think that's also like a big part of what we do is like, we want it to be fair, and we want all collaborations to look like they're truly like a collaboration versus a label slap. So we take our time with them.
How do you evaluate what type of collaboration is the right fit for Superplastic? Not just, is it equally balanced in highlighting, each of the brands, but what's the kind of mix? And everybody has a different evaluation, but what's kind of some of the pillars of what you might use to like evaluate what's the next collaboration, or if this one's a right fit for you guys?
I think like from a basic level, I look at it in like just two ways. Like one is like, what are other brands that we would collaborate? So brand on brand collaboration, and then artist or creator collaboration. And like within that pillar or that bucket is like several pillars. It's like artists, straight up like art, like who is making awesome, beautiful art that's really cool to work with, that's doing something amazing in the space. The other one would be music, what musicians obviously are out there. And that, that's that. And then other creators, right? Like there's kind of this open niche of like creators in social media and creators that are happening on digital platforms and all those kind of new avenues that are opening up, like NFTs and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say like those are kind of the three kind of pillars of who we would work with. And then each one, there's a list of filters that, that kind of like I check off in my mind. It's like, are they just good people? Are they assholes? Like that's the thing.
Yeah.
We don't work with people that suck, or we try not to, we're pretty lucky. And then like, what's their value add in the creative space, in the culture space? And then like, how does it come together? So like, I don't know if that answered your question, but
yeah, I think those are some great filters because, or at least, great to share, because it's like, okay, well, how do you know when to jump into a certain relationship? Sometimes it may not even be mutually beneficial, but yet maybe it helps a cause, right? Mm-hmm. Or whatever it is that, is the particular thing. So some things sometimes are not always all 100% in balance. Sometimes they're kind of like, it depends on the goal at hand too, what you need to accomplish. But you mentioned new space, which is interesting. And there's been a ton of articles about NFTs. I want to just preface the NFT part by, using the phrase, and hopefully I'm going to say it correctly, which is non-fungible tokens. And there's a whole space on digital collectibles. If you guys haven't been following along, like get out there and get some education on it. There's a ton of articles every day that I'm looking at, reading. There's clubhouses now that are out there, like little rooms you can drop in on and get some education. But so you guys are now starting to dip your toe into this space, and maybe you'll be all into the deep end. But at the moment, you've dipped your toe into the space. if you can share any information about that, what was it like and what did you do?
I mean, I think we're cannonballing into the space, to be honest. Like,
okay.
This is something, so we've been, Nifty Gateway, which in my opinion is like one of the best platforms right now. It's a very curated NFT experience, right? Like not everyone can get on it. So it's good for our brand because we're amongst other really great artists
right.
In a kind of a curated platform. They reached out almost a year ago probably about NFTs, and no one really knew what NFTs were. Yeah. And we were kind of we were very much like swimming in all of our stuff, like getting the movie ready and all that. So we kind of put it off. And then, you know, we started looking more and more at it, and we're like, yeah, we should like get on this and see what's up. And we had our first NFT collection drop about a month ago on Nifty Gateway. And I mean, we didn't know what to expect, right? We were like, oh, this could kind of go anywhere. And it sold out in like 3 seconds.
Wow.
Like
what was it that you dropped on there? What did you actually put on there?
I think I sent over a video. So we have.
Oh, okay. Yep, we can show that. Mm-hmm.
We built out, we built 2 auction pieces that were really unique. And then we had our Cranky series collection. And I think this NFT space, it's a crazy space right now, and it's changing every week. I mean, we're very dialed.
Yeah, it's like the Wild West.
It is. You're seeing like, it's like the gold rush right now. I mean, Charmin fucking toilet paper has.
Yeah, it's all that yesterday.
You know, people see that the Beeple thing went for $70 million.
Yeah.
This is like, it's a rush. We're in, which is great, and we understand, I think, as well as we can, the mechanics and how they're shifting and changing and what we need to be doing in the space. So yeah, we had our first drop with Nifty Gateway. We've got another one on Monday actually dropping, and we're going to start doing, you know, our marketing and our, you know, talking about it actually today on Clubhouse and throughout the weekend.
We scooped Clubhouse.
Yeah.
Scoop.
Yeah, totally. So, but yeah, I would say Clubhouse is a really awesome place to go to understand about this space. I will say, like, what's really important to the space is it is a community, right? It's a community of artists, and for the first time, it's kind of it's allowed artists to stand out and stand up for their own work and cut out the middleman, and people see the amount of
and
like
get paid for it. I mean, get paid for what they're worth. You know, well, I don't know about all of these things are worth the millions of dollars, but I mean, that's my evaluation. But you know, I mean, at least artists are, like you said, getting highlighted in a proper manner and also getting compensated in a proper manner.
I have friends that literally they made $3 million, $4 million at a clip. You know, it's like, wow. But they've worked really hard their whole lives to get that.
Yeah, right.
But I think like the space, what's interesting about it and the investment in it is like, you're going to have a lot of people running out and just like making, and they're not hard to make, right? Everyone's making them right now. And they're like, check out my NFT. Great. I think what we're trying to do in the space, and what I think smart, savvy artists are doing in the space, is they're being smart about what they're making. They're putting meaning behind their projects, and they're creating sustainability in a space that's going to be flooded and changing. Because at the end of the day, if I own a Superplastic piece or a Greg Mike piece or a Matt Gondak piece, or I'm just throwing out people that have done this well, you know, they're going to be holding on to something that's gaining value. And that's the whole idea, you know, behind NFTs being connected to the blockchain.
Right.
So, yeah, non-fungibles it's what we're focusing a lot of time on it right now. But at the same time, like, we were made for it.
Yeah.
In a weird way. Like, it's crazy. Like, you know, it's rendered 3D animated art, right? Or you can do JPEG, whatever you want to do your own thing. But like the way we curate our collections is the same way we've built out our worlds and our toys and our environment. So it goes really well hand in hand. We've got some huge, it just sounded like Donald Trump. Got some huge, sorry, that's gonna shock someone like, oh shit. So yeah, we've got some really, really big collaborations.
I just twitched when you did.
I know. You're in Florida, so you're like, oh damn, like, you're close. We've got really, really, really amazing collabs coming up. within the NFT space that we think are going to be really, really fun and valuable to the space, to growing it. We're bringing in some really big artists that are not currently in this NFT space, but they are monsters in the art world, right? And we're doing it in really interesting ways. We've got some tremendously big brand collaborations coming out that I cannot talk about. That'll be really great. And then, yeah, I mean, it's our focus because it's kind of like a fun thing, I guess.
Well, it's fun, and quite frankly, it's profitable at the moment.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that, but yeah, 100%.
I mean, this is about the business behind the fandom, right? So fandom's great, and we love being fans of a lot of different things. And oh, this is so cool. And I mean, last night I spent my 4 hours watching the Zack Snyder cut. Like, we do our business, we do our due diligence in the fan space. But then on the other hand, we have to do our due diligence as marketers and business people and what have you. We have businesses to run, quite frankly. And sometimes I think the fans get a little disconnected on like what it is that's happening behind the scenes and just what are the requirements. So I think sometimes it's good to highlight the fact that it's not that it's, bad or what have you, but it's just a nature of the business is, there are financial objectives and things that have to be done. And so you guys spending your time on the NFTs, and the profitability of that, I think is also good to highlight, because then maybe that'll also be going into investing into other parts that they already love, like the vinyl collections or the figures or anything else that you guys are going to be bringing to life. One hand kind of feeds the other, not washes necessarily, but it feeds into, whatever else you can do in the future.
That's a great point. And I was kind of delicate about that, and I'll be transparent, right? Because like, it's kind of what I do. I mean, for us, like what we're creating in the NFT space, like I'm standing behind. We're creating luxury digital collectibles. Whether anyone wants to believe it or not, NFTs are like, they're not going anywhere. They're only going to kind of become more of a thing. And there's going to be a lot of...
You think that'll get normalized out?
Yeah.
Like there'll be some kind of level off of...
Yeah, there has to be. I mean, I am 100% not going to sit here and be like, it's going to be like this. It's a gold rush right now. Everyone's trying to figure it out. Some people are doing it really well. I think it will go and crash, but I think that the people that spent the time and the diligence building out what they were making and doing will kind of rise to the top.
Yeah.
I think for us, like, it's tough because this is like a really new thing, right? Like this NFT space, a lot of people aren't able to grasp. And it's causing a lot of different kinds of emotions, right? Like I've been in rooms where artists are fucking crying because they're not getting a shot at getting an NFT on a certain platform, right? Like it's real, like it can change lives. Like I know people who's literally their lives are changed. Like, 1 second they're in their studio, the next they've got millions of dollars in their bank account as an artist. Like in my mind,
it's life-changing.
It's a renaissance in the art world that we have never experienced as a generation or hundreds of years or whatever. It's like a true renaissance or whatever. But I think like...
I wonder if this is how because we were too young at that time, but when the .com boom happened, right? Like I wonder if it's kind of similar to how people were kind of taking advantage at that time.
Yeah, it could be. Yes, exactly. Or like the internet, right?
Yeah,
like, the way to connect everyone. It was like, you're crazy.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
I don't know, maybe. But I mean, it's our goal or our job as a brand to educate our community in what this space is and what it means, right? Because I mean, we'll post something on our social and there'll be back and forth like a lot about whether or not like it's a cash grab or it's whatever. The reality is like this space isn't going anywhere. We're primed to do it. We are a little startup company that's self-funded, right? Like we're making money to put and invest back into the shit that they love. Like we're making more toys. We're making movies. We're making entertainment. We're owning our IP. We're not selling our brand out to anybody. And this space feels organic and natural for what I feel like we're doing. So I think it's, people will be able to kind of understand that as time moves on. I think like right now it is like what the hell is this? And like, oh my God. But yeah, I mean, It's super exciting. I don't sleep anymore. Like it's legit. Like I've got my phone down and he's probably called a lot, but yeah, I mean, we're excited about it. And it's definitely a huge focus for like our brand business right now. Yeah.
Well, you're going to be able to call Paul back soon because unfortunately we are coming to a close on our time together, which, it always seems to go so quickly, but, I'm really glad that you were able to spend some time with us. So tell us where to find you guys, where to find you, if you care to share your own personal, locations and, what's next.
Yeah. So you can go follow our characters at Janky, at Googymon, at Daisy and Stacks on Instagram, TikTok, at Superplastic to see what we're up to as a brand.
On Instagram?
Yep, on Instagram. Go check out Nifty Gateway. If you're interested in the NFT space, we have our drop coming up on Monday. I think it's like 7 p.m. Eastern is when it happens. Hopefully that sells out quickly. Yeah. And I just say, keep watch for all sorts of weird things to be happening.
Well, I'm really happy for you and for the success of the company. I love watching all these new kind of ideas pop up, especially when they're folks that I knew back when. And it's like, oh, this is kind of neat. It's coming out this way, and they're doing something new and unusual. So the door is always open. The digital door is always open. So if you ever want to come back and catch us up on, the progress behind Superplastic and your NFTs and anything else you want to share, we're always here. And you guys for following along, I really appreciate your time. Every week we're here, 1 p.m. Eastern. This is Fangirl Friday Live. We always are unpacking the business behind fandom. We'll have another installment for you next week and hopefully we'll see you soon. So happy Fangirl Friday, everybody. And thanks for your time. Bye.